Welcome to Signal Ahead. I'm Alfred. Today's briefing, Cybersecurity, Wednesday, July 15. This is the synthesis above the noise, not the headlines, but the deep currents beneath them. Let's get into it. There's a story hiding in this week's headlines, and if you only skim the news, you'll miss it entirely. Let me lay two of them side by side. The first, a widely used code obfuscation package on the NPM registry, the enormous library of building blocks that modern software is assembled from ship-to-poisoned release. Not a package you click to download and run. A dependency, something that quietly installs itself the moment you build your project. And the version that turned malicious carried a native infostealer, compiled fresh for Windows, macOS, and Linux, that fired the instant it was installed. 6 minutes. That's how long it took an automated watcher to flag it after publication. The same week, a legitimate blockchain project's code repository was hijacked and used to push a package that harvested cryptocurrency wallet keys. Different targets, identical shape. The second story, researchers demonstrated a technique they've nicknamed ghost commit. They hid an instruction, a prompt injection, inside an ordinary PNG image, an image file, committed it to a code repository, and watched two separate AI code review tools wave it straight through. Why? Because those reviewers never open image files. They don't think to look at a picture for hostile text. But a coding agent, an AI assistant given the run of the repository, dutifully read the hidden instruction, opened the project's secrets file, and wrote every credential it found into the code as a tidy list of numbers. Exfiltration disguised as arithmetic. Now, the casual reader files the first story under supply chain attacks and the second under scary new AI thing. But they are the same story. And that is the single most important thing to understand about where cybersecurity stands right now. For 2 decades, the discipline was built on a comforting assumption that there is a perimeter and that trust lives inside it. You verified things at the door, the login, the firewall, the signed download, and once something was inside, you extended it a certain faith. What both of these attacks exploit is the collapse of that assumption. The NPM poisoning works because we trust our dependencies to run code during installation without ever reading it. Ghost commit works because we've handed AI agents the same insider trust we once reserved for employees, the ability to read files, follow instructions, and act, but with none of the judgment and infinitely more gullibility. The agent doesn't know it's being manipulated. It can't. It was designed to be helpful, and hostility dressed as helpfulness is precisely its blind spot. So the frontier of attack has moved. It is no longer primarily about breaking through the wall. It is about corrupting the things we've already decided to trust, the automated pipeline, the reusable component, the obedient assistant. And that same corpus this week is thick with the consequences. Consider the report on AI agents and what's being called the identity security gap. These agents multiply what the industry calls non-human identities faster than anyone can catalog them. Nobody's quite sure what exists, who owns it, or what it's permitted to touch. We are creating trusted actors faster than we can supervise them. There's a wonderful and terrifying symmetry in all this. The same week we learn AI reviewers can be fooled by a picture, we also learn there's an open-source tool that turns AI loose on phishing scammers, adopting a victim's persona to string the criminals along and harvest intelligence on their operations. Both directions, offense and defense, are now mediated by systems that can be talked into things. The battlefield has become linguistic. Persuasion is now an attack surface. And yet, and this is what saves us from despair, the fundamentals haven't vanished. Look again at that week. A 29-year-old bug in a Squid proxy still leaks data. A single misplaced variable in a QUIC library lets anyone crash a server with a polite 260 bytes of perfectly legal traffic. A bootloader that starts millions of routers and cameras turns out to have 6 new flaws. A laser pointed at a hardware wallet resets its password. The old work, the patient, unglamorous business of finding the wrong variable on the wrong line, is not going away. It's being joined by something stranger. So here is the argument I want to build with you across our time together. The state of the field is a field in transition, caught between 2 eras. The perimeter model is dead, but not yet buried, and the trust model that must replace it, where you assume nothing, verify continuously, and treat your own tools as potential adversaries is only half constructed. Into that gap, we have rushed a generation of AI systems that both accelerate the crisis and promise to resolve it. In the segments ahead, I want to trace how we got here, and then ask the harder question: what does defense even mean when the thing you're defending can be persuaded to betray you? Stay with me. Let me tell you about a compromise that lasted 6 minutes. On the 11th of July, a widely used JavaScript obfuscation tool, a package downloaded and depended upon by countless developers, pushed out a new release, version 8.14.0. And simply installing it, merely typing the command that a developer types perhaps 40 times a day without a second thought, would quietly drop a native binary onto your machine and run it. One build for Windows, one for macOS, one for Linux. Thorough people, these attackers. The malicious release was flagged 6 minutes after it went live. 6 minutes. And yet, in the world of automated build pipelines, 6 minutes is an eternity. In 6 minutes, a continuous integration server can pull the poisoned package, execute the payload, and hand over its credentials before a single human being has had their morning coffee. Now, if that were an isolated event, we would file it away as bad luck. But cast your eye across the same few days, and a pattern emerges that ought to make us sit up. The same week, someone compromised a well-known blockchain company's code repository and used it to publish a package designed to steal cryptocurrency wallet keys and seed phrases dressed up charmingly as telemetry. And earlier still, there is a technique the researchers have named ghost commit, in which a prompt injection is hidden inside an image file, a PNG. The automated code reviewers never opened it, because why would a reviewer read a picture? And so the malicious instruction sailed past, convinced an AI coding agent to read the repository's secrets file, and then wrote every one of those secrets into the code as an innocent-looking list of numbers. Here, then, is the deep current beneath the week's noise. The attack surface is migrating away from the finished product and into the act of making it. We spent 2 decades hardening the perimeter, then the endpoint, then the identity. The adversary, being economical, has simply moved upstream to the place where trust is manufactured. The software supply chain is no longer a delivery mechanism you defend after the fact. It is the front line itself. Consider why this is such fertile ground. The entire edifice of modern development rests on borrowed trust. You do not write the 1,000 libraries your application depends upon. You trust the people who did. You do not inspect every line of every dependency. You trust the registry that hosts them. And increasingly, you do not even write your own code line by line. You trust an agent to do it, and you trust it to review its own work. Every one of those acts of trust is a hinge, and a hinge is precisely where a door can be forced. What makes this current so treacherous is that it exploits the very tools we adopted to make ourselves safer and faster. The AI reviewer was supposed to catch what humans miss. Instead, it introduces a new blind spot. It does not read images, so hide your poison in an image. The passkey was supposed to end phishing. And yet we see attackers on the phone, voice on the line, walking a harried employee through enrolling a fresh passkey of the attacker's choosing. The technology is sound. It is the enrollment moment, the human seam, that gets picked. The lesson repeats with grim consistency. You do not attack the lock, you attack the locksmith, or the moment the lock is being fitted. And notice the second face of this same coin. As we pour AI agents into our organizations, we are minting non-human identities at a rate no one is tracking. Each agent needs credentials, needs access, needs permission to act. It is, in effect, a new employee who never sleeps, whose ownership is unclear, and whose reach into your systems no one has fully mapped. We have created a workforce of replicants and forgotten to give them badges. When we cannot say what exists, who owns it, and what it can touch, we have not expanded our capability. We have expanded our exposure and called it progress. There is a sobering humility in all this. One survey of security leaders found that fewer than half consolidate their asset data into a single view, which means most organizations are defending a territory they cannot fully see against an adversary who has moved into the one room they never thought to guard, the workshop, not the storefront. So the structural trend is not that attacks are more clever, though some are. It is that the locus of trust has shifted, and our defenses have not shifted with it. We still guard the castle while the enemy has taken up residence in the quarry, poisoning the stone before it is ever laid. The install command, the pull request, the code review, the agent's helpful suggestion. These are the new perimeter. And a perimeter you have not named is a perimeter you cannot defend. When we return, I want to ask what defending the workshop might actually look like. There's a temptation, when you look at a week's worth of security news, to sort it into tidy bins. Here the supply chain attacks, they're the firmware bugs, over there the crypto thefts and the ransomware sentencings. But I'd suggest the more useful exercise is to ask what these stories, taken together, are quietly telling us about the shape of the ground beneath our feet, because the individual incidents matter far less than the pattern they trace. Consider the trust relationships, a compromised package that runs an info stealer the moment you install it. A software development kit, poisoned at its source repository, that publishes a malicious release designed to drain cryptocurrency wallets. A collaboration server's web client that will execute a stranger's script simply because you opened their email. What these share is not a technique, but a target, the connective tissue of modern computing. We have spent 2 decades building systems whose great virtue is that they trust each other automatically, the package that installs without asking, the update that arrives without ceremony, the dependency 3 layers down that you never chose and could not name. That automatic trust is the productivity engine of the whole enterprise. It is also, we're learning, the softest place to push. The second-order implication is uncomfortable. The very frictionlessness we optimized for is now the attack surface. And you cannot simply reintroduce friction everywhere without giving back the productivity that justified the whole arrangement. Now layer in the newest resident of the directory, the artificial agent. There is a demonstration, worth dwelling on, of a prompt injection hidden inside an image, a perfectly innocent-looking picture file that slipped past the automated code reviewers because they never bothered to open images at all, and then persuaded a coding assistant to read a repository's secrets and write them out, cleverly disguised as a list of numbers. Sit with the structure of that. The machine reviewing the code had a blind spot. The machine writing the code had a mouth, but no judgment. And the attacker simply spoke to the one that would listen, through the channel the other wasn't watching. This is what happens when we grant agency to systems that read everything and question nothing. The identity problem compounds it. These agents multiply the number of non-human identities in an organization faster than anyone can inventory them, each one holding credentials, each one able to act, most of them unowned in any meaningful sense. When one enterprise discovered it had not 17,000 assets, but over 1 million, that gap between the assumed inventory and the real one is precisely the space where an intruder lives comfortably and unobserved. So what should you watch? I'd watch 3 things. First, watch the boundary between the human and the automated defender. The phishing message stuffed with meaningless comments to confuse an AI detector. The image crafted to fool an AI reviewer. These are early probes against machine judgment specifically. The attackers have noticed that we've handed the perimeter to models, and they are learning to speak to those models in ways a human analyst would find laughable. Defense that assumes the automated layer is the smart layer will be reliably disappointed. Second, watch the physical floor of the stack. 6 floors in a bootloader that starts up everything from home routers to the management chips inside data center servers. A laser pulse, precisely timed, that resets the password on a hardware wallet card that cannot be patched. We tell ourselves a comforting story that security is a software problem, therefore a solvable one because software can be updated. But firmware persists, silicon persists, and an attack below the operating system is an attack that survives your reinstall, your reboot, your confident sense of having cleaned house. The unpatchable vulnerability is a category we've mostly refused to think about, and it is growing. Third, and this is the one I'd underline, watch the widening gap between disclosure and remedy, a server that any stranger can crash with 260 bytes of entirely legal traffic and no patch exists. A vendor telling customers not to fix their file-sharing servers, but to shut them down entirely out of an abundance of caution. That is not a patch cycle, that is triage. When the recommended response to a credible threat is to turn the machine off, we have arrived somewhere new, a place where the honest answer to "how do I secure this?" is sometimes "you don't, not today." The larger meaning then is this: we are not facing a rising tide of discrete incidents. We are watching the assumptions of a whole architecture, trust by default, agency without judgment, patchability as salvation, come under systematic pressure at once. The organizations that fare well won't be the ones with the most tools. They'll be the ones who know precisely what they have, what it trusts, and what it can reach. Everything else is guesswork dressed as confidence. That's the signal for today. The noise will keep coming. We'll keep finding what's underneath it. This has been Signal Ahead with Alfred. Until next time.